Namaste friends. I hope you are in the best of your spirits and finding this series very useful in your learning goals. I do hope you are revising the concepts and knowledge as a routine now and also finding the parallel learning almost randomized at times, not just interesting but also enriching. Today I have got 10 organizations of India from the social sector, NGOs so to say, which I think you should know. Though there are many more doing great work, but these 10 are something which is not just important but may even inspire you to do something sometime. So do make a note as we proceed. Alright, so let us take 10 more questions and learn more about India as a system of governance. As always, for best learning, I recommend you pause the video after each question is displayed, mark your own answer and only then proceed to listen. Take it as a mini test, right? You may also like to join the Telegram channel mentioned in the description for more quizzes and other relevant information. Okay, so here goes the first question of this explanation video. Which of the following is the oldest high court in India? In just the last to last video, we did come across something which leads us to this question, that the first high court was created in Calcutta in 1862, and that was by the Indian High Courts Act. Though interestingly, you should also know that there were the other two, Madras and Bombay, they were also created in the same year of 1862. It's just slightly later. So while Calcutta was on 1st of July, you had Bombay coming up on 14th of August and Madras coming up on 15th of August in 1862. It's not important to know these dates, but these were the first three which were created by the Queen's order finally. Delhi, I'm sure you could have easily guessed, it is created by the Delhi High Courts Act of the year 1966. So this was much later than the rest of them. So anyway, the correct answer should be Calcutta High Court. So moving on to, by the way, is their organization Pratham and Asar, which is almost used by everybody to understand about Indian education levels, and the Asar report, very popular. So Pratham is one of those NGOs who have been able to create that kind of a mark in the society. Okay, so the next question is, which of the following is an essential feature of a unitary system of government? Now this is a very interesting question, I find, and let's see the options here. Unwritten constitution. Now a unitary country may have written constitution, may have unwritten constitution, right? See, why something becomes essential, right, is to make the system survive like that, and there are forces to disintegrate it. So in a federal system, there are forces to disintegrate, so there have to be provisions, otherwise the federation will not survive. If you see, unitary system is such where there is nothing that we are trying to preserve except the state. So having a constitution itself is also perhaps not even necessary, because many countries can survive without having a written constitution also, right? Of course, they need rules and laws and things like that, but not necessarily even a written constitution or unwritten constitution. So we can have in a unitary country any of these things. Independence of judiciary, right? See, again, these are things which are more to do with your separation of power and democratic principles, but a unitary system does not require actually any of them. Now, I think a lot of confusion would have been around the third point, that absence of regional local governments. That's not essential. See, the point is, do they have their constitutional backing or not? So in, like for example, UK, it is a unitary system of government, and they have local governments as well. They have municipal bodies, they have counties, and they have whatnot. But it's not constitutionally recognized as a separate entity. The union, the center is all powerful, right? So a unitary system may have these things, may not have these things. It's not important. Okay. So actually the answer should be none of these. So that organization, Association for Democratic Reforms, I don't have to elaborate. I'm sure you have come across their name yourself also. So many PILs, so many Supreme Court cases in the field of electoral and political reforms. Do read about them. So we go to the next question, and that is in India, other than ensuring that public funds are used efficiently and for intended purpose, what is the importance of the Office of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, the CAG? This is actually a previous year question, and as always, I just tweak it slightly. And that's when, somehow I actually feel disappointed at times also to see, the kind of the number of people who are able to answer even previous year questions. That should not happen. A repeat of a question, you should just, hammer it out. Anyway, CAG exercises exchequer control on behalf of the parliament. No, CAG has no such control. CAG does not approve of any payment, does not authorize any payment on behalf of the parliament. CAG has no such role to play. Okay. So no exchequer control is there. Then reports of CAG on the execution of projects, etc., is discussed by the Public Accounts Committee. Yes, we know that is one essential function of the CAG, because CAG is kind of, in a way, as they say, the friend, philosopher and guide for the Public Accounts Committee to fulfill the responsibilities of the Parliament in keeping a check and control on the government finances. It's the CAG who's the eyes and ears in a way. So yes, I mean, that's correct. Then you have third statement, information from CAG report can be used by investigating agencies to press charges against those who have violated. Yes, absolutely. This is exactly, you would recall how the whole drama of 2G scam started. It was essentially the CAG's report which started all of that. So yes, it can be used to press charges. But of course, the investigation has to happen independent of it also. The investigating authority, let's say the CBI, etc., which is usually the case, they will have to conduct investigation. But yes, CAG report, can be used, to initiate all that process and go through that. Okay, so that's also correct. Fourth statement, while dealing with the audit and accounting, CAG has certain judicial powers for prosecuting those who violate law. No, that's not the case, and that is exactly what is being demanded as a reform. Like many other countries, where the CAG or the auditor of the government should have prosecution power also, but because otherwise they are just recommending, and that's the lack of significance you will see in the government, that the audit paras remain pending. And how much work can Parliament also do? After all, they are also people, and they also have a million other things to look at. So CAG's report is just one thing which they would be, looking at. Anyway, so 2 and 3 are the correct statements for us. Well, that's what I was saying, that less than 1/3 of you got it right, even though it's a previous year question. So moving on to the next question. In case of annual budget is not passed by the Lok Sabha, what happens? This is actually also a previous year question, but a very basic idea. I don't think I need to discuss it here. There's no meaning of budget being modified and presented. Rajya Sabha has no role to play here effectively. And why should only the Union Finance Minister resign? They all swim together and sink together. A cut motion has been passed, and hence the government will go. And it essentially means that the Prime Minister will submit the resignation on behalf of the whole Council of Ministers. So the correct answer should be this one. I don't think this was really that difficult, and good. 3/4 of you got it right, so not bad. Next, we have the M3 EVM has recently been in the news during elections. Which of the following statements are correct in its regard? Okay, so I'm sure you know these are the generations of EVMs. Till last year's Lok Sabha election in Lok Sabha, we used to have the M2 EVMs. So now it's a mix, but largely M3 EVMs have been brought in. So let's see the statements. I'll recommend you quickly, just go to the website of Election Commission. Actually, in this case, it is their ECI sweep, right? The Election Commission of India Systematic Voter Education, some program. ECI, this is their website, ECI sweep, and go and just, there is a section which says, know your EVM or know your ballot machine, something like that, and you can read from there even a little bit more about in general EVMs. It's just one short page. So first statement says, unlike M2 EVMs, which had a limit of connecting only 4 balloting units, there is no limit with M3 EVMs. No, that's not correct. Now the limit is just 24. So it's increased a lot. So instead of having just 64 candidates, now you can have 384 candidates, of course including Nota. So Nota is the last one, we know that. So this is actually wrong. And second one says there is no limit on the number of votes an M3 EVM can record. No, this is also wrong. There is an upper limit. M2, M3, all EVMs, they have the capability of recording maximum 2000 votes. And we actually don't have to work much on this, because this is anyway much more than the number of people who are there as per design at a polling booth, who will be able to vote within a span of, the time that the polling booth opens for 8 or 10 hours, right? So both are incorrect. As I recommended, please go and read the FAQ there. Let's go to the next question, and that is this. In which of the following cases did the Supreme Court declare federalism as a basic feature of the Constitution of India? A very, very important thing that I wanted you to learn. I hope you noticed that the answer in the answer key is different from what the quiz on the channel had, right? I did change the answer, and that is partly on purpose I did it. You may have seen sometimes that UPSC's answers may not be the most technically correct answers at times. Let's just accept that first, okay? They may not be the most technically correct answers. So please follow what I discuss here very carefully. Now see, all these cases, all of these 4 cases here, they have got something to do with federalism. Well, at least in these judgments there was something. So for example, automobile transport case of 1962, this characterized Indian polity as federal. It said it is federal, right? Then in Keshavananda Bharati case, some of the judges, they considered federation as one of the basic features of the constitutions, but they did not actually, the whole bench or the majority did not mention it. Some of the judges did hold this. Right, so as you know, the judgment is always by majority. So it was actually considered, but no judgment came out like that. Now SR Bommai case, there was a 9-judge bench. This one also, and the 9 judges bench, it has clearly stated that our constitution is federal, though only some of the judges considered federalism as a basic feature. Okay, only some of the judges, not majority judges. However, in the majority judgment that was delivered, it did mention this. It did say that federalism is a basic feature, though as obiter, not the ratio. Okay, which means simply that it is not essential for the judgment or for even precedence in future. But since it was just mentioned in the judgment, it became a very popular thing in media and everywhere in society that SR Bommai judgment has said this. It was not even one of the questions before the bench actually to give a judgment on that. Okay, it was not the question. But it just, kind of an observation that was also in the judgment as such. But remember, obiter, not ratio. Then the 4th the case, Kuldeep Nayyar. This is where actually the bench regarded the federal principle as a basic feature. And it was a ratio this time, which means they considered it as a rule on which the judgment is to be based, right? So, in the most technical sense of the judgment of the court, the most accurate answer should actually be Kuldeep Nayyar case. However, sensing how UPSC may go for considering such cases, I would definitely consider marking SR Bommai case. This is exactly what I want you to understand, because otherwise people get confused, in many questions. See, if you observe UPSC's spirit behind this exam, it always tends to check a general understanding, yet a nuanced learning. Mind it what I said. Understanding is general, but the learning is nuanced. Okay? So, for example, a question, actual questions, let's see. Who appoints the Chief Secretary of a state? It is governor. But since that is not a stated provision, hence the understood meaning is taken for the answer. That is the Chief Minister. But see, if there is a stated provision, UPSC's answers are always what is the stated principle. Like see, who appoints the Chief Election Commissioner? President of India. Even though we know at the background is the Prime Minister. I hope you got the point. Another classic example is the nature of right to vote and the right to contest election. It is beyond any doubt a statutory right, even as per the courts. However, in a more generalized manner, as is also written in the NCERT books, you would have seen, UPSC did consider right to vote as a constitutional right. See, it can be disputed, right? But only if we become too technical about it. So I hope you got the point here and understand that after all, it is an exam which one has to clear. So remember the principle, generalized approach. Don't make it a formula. It's the approach that you should be looking at. So anyway, because we're not going to get into that kind of nuanced understanding, a generalized understanding would tell us that SR Bommai is the correct answer, and let's go with that. So let's move ahead. We have spent a lot of time on this. Next question is, members of the standing committees of the Union Cabinet are appointed by. We have got some options here. We did have, earlier, another question. like this. Anyway, so if you see the transaction of business rules, remember the president has the power to make rules for convenient transaction for the transaction of the business of the government. So these are the rules, and as per the rules, the standing committee members, etc., who will be a member of which committee, it is all decided by the Prime Minister. In fact, who will be a minister of which ministry, who will be a cabinet minister, who will be Minister of State, everything is decided by the Prime Minister. Of course, how the Prime Minister decides, there may be many factors. But for us, it is the Prime Minister's decision. So remember that. And so, I mean, it's a straightforward question actually. Let's go to the next question, and that is, which of the following are human rights under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? UDHR. See, pretty much everything one can imagine is in the UDHR. Many of them are not even in fundamental rights of Constitution of India, at least explicitly stated, like this right to property. It was there, now it is out from the fundamental rights. It is one of the human rights under the UDHR. I would sincerely recommend go to the website of United Nations and go through the rights, all the UDHR. They're just only 30 articles, right? And few sentences here. So you can quickly go through them. The very first sentence itself tells you what the right is. Nothing to mug up or something, just be aware, you have read the human rights of the world, that itself should give you a lot of, confidence in your learning. I believe it will help you in many ways beyond the exam also. So anyway, all of them are there. Should not have been difficult, but just half of you could get that. No worries, as long as we improve, that's the goal. So let's go to the next question that we have, and that is, which of the following powers of the President of India can be exercised within their discretion? Now, without even looking at the options, I am a person who would think that, okay, most likely they would have something to catch me here, because as a principle, we know there is no discretion of the president. But yes, we also know there's some situations, some, unusual situations, once in 50 years perhaps, or once in 20, 30 years, some situation would arise when the discretion will be there. So I just have to be very careful. If it's a very general kind of a thing written there, of course, it's not a discretion. So my blind answer would be all of them anyway, right? In fact, none of them, and because it's asking what is a discretion, so nothing is a discretion. But let's see, just to be sure. Declaration of withholding of assent of a bill, which is nothing but what we call the absolute veto. That is on advice, right? So this is not on discretion. Declaration of war, no, this is not at all a decision. This is also on advice. Summoning a joint sitting of both houses of parliament to resolve deadlock, that is also what the government recommends, right? So none of this is actually, as kind of guessed, none of this is actually the discretionary powers of president. Practically, remember, all executive power of the union is exercised by the president, but it is just in the name of president. For example, I always, say this to explain that we say that a civil servant of the union is appointed by the president. Like if you clear, and I do hope you clear this as soon as possible, if you clear this exam, even you will be appointed by the president, but president does not even know who you are. He has actually not appointed you. It's just his authority, his name is being used for your appointment, and the power has been delegated, right? And that's where comes the idea of appointing by a warrant under his own hand and seal. That does not happen in the case of a civil servant here, like you, in general, all of us. So we'll discuss this sometime else, because another question will be lined up for that. See, understand one thing, these videos are not supposed to be teaching you. Yeah, in a way they end up teaching you something, but they are just the finer nuances, just filling the gaps approach, right? And helping you revise. Okay, so that's why I try to keep it short and very precise and targeted. Anyhow, so we go to the last question of this video now, and that is, which of the following statements is or are correct? The number of members of UPSC and their conditions of service is determined by the president. Yes, absolutely correct. This is exactly the provision of Article 318. So there is no law of parliament, etc. Okay, it is purely as decided by the President of India. And the second statement says the chairman of the Finance Commission shall be selected from among persons who have special knowledge of the finances and accounts of the government. Well, that's actually not correct. See, in the case of Finance Commission, we have a Finance Commission Act of the year 1951, which specifies the qualifications, etc. And if you read that, right in the beginning, it says that the chairman of the commission shall be selected from among persons who have had experience in public affairs. Okay, so what is the condition for the chairman? Someone who has had experience in public affairs. Okay, and then it says that the other 4 members shall be selected from there are 4 categories of people. For example, one where the person should be qualified or have been appointed or whatever as a judge of a high court. Then secondly, it will say that someone who has a special knowledge of the finances of the government. Then someone who is experienced in administration or financial matters specifically. And somebody then who's good in economics, who has a special knowledge of economics. So these are the 4 thoughts that are presented there. It's not necessary you should have one from each category. For example, right now there is nobody who's a judge of High Court in the present Finance Commission. But the possibility is there that they may be appointed. Of course, this is a quasi-judicial body. They have to interpret many laws. So it's very logical why this provision is there to possibly even appoint a potential judge of High Court or an ex-judge of High Court. Well, that's the last question of this video today. And moving on, I thought we keep talking about these things. We've heard of them a lot. The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. So I thought I'll put it up on the screen for you. Though you can read all these things, I know, but these are not things which actually we bother about. But 5 minutes of your time will make you learn a lot. This is how the story of India's fundamental rights also started in some way. Pause, read more, listen, see more and make notes if you want. I'll see you soon with 10 more questions. Till then, study well. Thank you very much.